Just going up, loading. Hello and welcome to our live afternoon session today with Jubix Tenants. My name is Susan Falola, CEO, Creative Director of Jubix Limited, and our topic in question today is about CBDCs and blockchain and digital currencies and what impact that they could potentially have on developing countries. So I'll just give you a little background about Jubix. Jubix is a financial intermediary that connects startups and social projects with the relevant expertise and investment. We do this anonymously in real time and offer a ledger where you can actually see your computative finance, your effort tracking, as well as any participative collaborative efforts that other people have done over time. So I'd now like to pass it over to Ivan to introduce himself. Ivan, if you could take over.
Sure. Thanks for having us, Susan. So you had me listed as a data scientist. That might have been pulled from an outdated LinkedIn profile, but I'm not a data science by trade. I'll just make that clear. But I'm a recent college graduate. My background is in facilities and mechanical engineering, but I study pretty much independently blockchain, and that makes up all my time. I just published the book Blockchain Wars, and I focus mostly now on programming on Web3 infrastructures, my favorite of which being Dfinity. So that's my background. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Ivan. And if we could go to Jacina.
Oh, hi, Susan. First of all, thank you for inviting me. It's great. We are three girls here. Woohoo! So sorry, Veronique. So sorry.
No, I think it's great.
But it's great when you can see human working. So my name is Josina, and I'm a blockchain advisor and a consultant. My background is in economics, and I'm the first holder blockchain PhD in Portugal. A human. I'm always joking with this. So before starting as an investigator in 2016 in a blockchain ecosystem, I worked over 20 years in the corporate world as a marketing director, and the finance, it's really definitely my cup of tea. So I'm currently a blockchain consultant, a trainer in SVCS, London-based, as well as a lecturer and advisor at various institutions. I'm also a member of INATBA, Academic Advisory Board, that means International Association of Trusted Blockchain Applications. So it's my background.
Wow.
No, don't care. It's about a lot of titles. So everybody is in the same. And thank you, Susan, for creating this kind of panel. Why? Because everybody is discovering new use cases of blockchain. So everybody is in the same stage. Thank you,
Fantastic.
Susan.
Thank you so much, Jacina. I love that passion. So let's go over to our next speaker, and that should be Vasilisa.
Vasilisa.
Vasilisa. Oh, that's even, yeah. So Vasilisa, yeah.
Yeah.
Better.
Yes. Well, first of all, Susan, thank you for invitation for having us here today. It's a pleasure to be here. So my name is Vasilisa Marinchuk. I am the Director of International Relations for the Center Blockchain of Catalonia here in Barcelona. The Blockchain Center basically works for the enforcing adoption and fostering the adoption of the blockchain in the region, and also making the region more attractive for the international community to come and work here or do business here. Besides that, I'm also the director of the conference, actually, which is Democracy for All, which is devoted to the blockchain issues, but more on the social level, more on the governance level. So we try to focus less on the crypto part, but more like on the blockchain technology and how it can impact the lives of the people of the society, of the citizens, right? So I entered the space of blockchain more or less like in 2016 as well. More actually at that point of time, I've been working like in the Wavecrest, the company a lot of people know because it was supplying the cards to the crypto wallets so that people can actually use it to pay like in real life with their Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever currencies. And since then, I was like very much into space. I was fascinated by blockchain, by the crypto world, by the capabilities of the technology. And right now, like I told you what I'm doing, and looking forward to our discussion.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. And if we go to Nicholas.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, once again, it's been said 3 times already, but once again, Susan, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I'm representing the Load Project today. The Load Project is an initiative to tokenize gold and silver on the blockchain and put it into the world, not just as a speculative asset, but as a functional currency, largely for the entire world. We're active in over 100 different countries already with close to 10,000 members. We've been active for over 4 years, and it's been a really interesting journey collaborating with regulators in a space that has regulation changing day and night at a pretty rapid race. We hope to bring this product to scale now in 2021. And, we're very ambitious about trying to get into developing nations and make waves into regions and areas that suffer from hyperinflation and really have the need for a universal form of money that is stabilized through a physical asset like gold and silver. And so, yeah, this is a topic that is really near and dear to us today. So thank you once again for having me. One final component within the project, my role, I have largely played the role of a Swiss Army knife, meaning that I do many, many things, but that's pretty standard for many startup or business in its early days. That being said, I largely fill the role of product designer. I'm a VP of product, and I also spearhead most of the marketing initiatives within the project. So really, my experience is based around how do I make the experience of using blockchain technology of digital gold and silver super easy and intuitive and natural for people to use, and how do I bring this to market in a global way?
Thank you so much for that, Nicholas. It seems like you are definitely an all-rounder. So I'm sure you have a versatile expertise. So let's go into our first question today. So first I'm going to give an overview of the subject, and then we'll go into our first question. So the vast transactional trust and security advantages of Bitcoin are dwarfed by the international resource-intensive design in its transaction verification process, which now threatens the climate we depend upon for survival. Central banking in the age of digital currencies is a fast developing topic in monetary economics. Blockchain technology behind digital currencies has the potential to improve central banks' payment and clearing operations, and possibly to serve as a platform for which central banks might launch their own digital currencies. So that takes us nicely into our first question. What is blockchain and why do we need it? Is blockchain legally cost intensive? So I'm going to first hand that over to Josina to first answer, and if Lisa would come in after, that would be great. And then if Ivan and Nicholas could come in after that, that would be fantastic. Thank you. So Josie, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So blockchain is I think that we have a problem with the mic. So blockchain is a versatile and programmable platform. There is collaborative, transparent, and unchangeable, and allows through a verification system of proof of authenticity of each transaction. It's also for us immutable, anonymous, and unhackable, and decentralized ledger. Normally, when I'm giving classes, I can say that it is not a new technology, as everybody tells. It's something that we can use a comparison with our kitchen. We have all the ingredients there, sugar, milk, everything, but if you change the way that we can mix them, we have another kind of receipt. And blockchain is definitely, it's not a new one, but the use that we can mix all the instruments can give us a completely different output, mainly with all our devices now. So blockchain or distributed ledger is underlying force behind Bitcoin. Thanks God and thanks Nakoto that give us the opportunity to stabilize and increase the speed of exchange and minimize transaction backlog of overall costs. This is one of the benefits. Yes, definitely, it's a ledger that can validate in each transaction everything that we can do. So I will pass, because all my fellows that has a new kind of interpretation of blockchain. So please, Patsy.
Thank you so much for that, Vasilia.
Yes, I just was unmuting myself. I think I'm fascinated by their force which Joyce is sharing here, like so many good emotions. Thank you for that. What I would say that blockchain, I mean, yes, it is a technology which can be used in many means, and the financial world is just one of them. We know that, especially like being in the space for quite a while, we know that this can be used a lot for the digital identity purposes. Again, because it's immutable, because it's secure, and it's decentralized, which is very key quality of the whole blockchain technology, right? To be decentralized. We can use it for so many things like voting, proving anything which we want, basically, again, because we're using the system of cryptography and the private key and the public key, right? So that we can actually authenticate people on the other side, and you can always say this certain transaction or a vote or anything belongs to a particular person. So that opens the door for lots of opportunities. Though, of course, there are certain limitations, and sometimes it's still very much cost inefficient, or sometimes it's not scalable at all points. But we are developing in the last few years, we progressed heavily. Like right now, there are so many layers and protocols who's solving the issue of scalability. And right now, we're even more focused. We can move on to the next step and focus on interoperability, so that we actually bring different blockchains together and they can operate. So from my perspective, again, that this is something here to stay. We're going to use it more and more, but of course, as a technology, it should go a little bit behind the scene. So that was Nicholas referring to in the very beginning. It's very important that people use it, but don't think about how it's working, right? You drive in the car, you don't need to be a mechanic, right? You just need to have a driving license. So that's from my part.
Thank you so much for that. And if we go to Ivan and then Nicholas coming after, that'll be fantastic. Thank you, Ivan. Let me just take your.
Yeah, sure. So I'll just say I spent a lot of time trying to explain what the word blockchain means, and I tried to almost completely purge it from my vocabulary, because I think whenever it's used, it's really abstracting away the complexity for something that's not even remotely related to one of the early blockchains. So I kind of move away from that. Sometimes I wonder if that word was never coined, and it wasn't coined by the creator of Bitcoin, then what would we really be calling these things? And I think it would just be all computer science nerds naming certain protocols for what they really do. So I do think blockchain is just kind of a buzzword, and in like the broader context of the industry that it's taking over, I think it's as far reaching as the internet itself. And that's where things get interesting. So in that sense, it is a good word, because the crypto sphere has pretty much touched everything. It's touched law, it touched computing, supply chains, identity. So across the board, there is a Swiss Army knife, as Nicholas would put it, element to these blockchains. But at a technical level, it's something a little bit different than we could put in a single word. So.
Thank you so much for that, Nicholas.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some really great perspectives on how to describe a blockchain. I'll take my own stab at it. Essentially, a blockchain is a digital receipt, as you put it. It's a handshake that uses consensus algorithms to validate that a transfer of value has happened, meaning that rather than having an intermediary, the necessary intermediary of something like a financial institution, we can depend on algorithms to substantiate that this transaction and this value has gone. from one party to another. And this is applicable most commonly with financial instruments because it's very transactional, it's back and forth, and it makes a lot of sense. But again, can be applied to identity and even voting, which I think is a fantastic use case for the record. Real estate law, even energy, even we're seeing in the energy sector some practical applications of this technology. So for the layman out there, for the people just dipping their toes into it, think of it as a virtual handshake that is conducted through computers versus institutions.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that, Nicholas. Actually, I heard another explanation of it the other day, and I thought it was quite genius. Was that blockchain is like Lego. So obviously Lego, you can make a plane, you can make all of these different buildings out of Lego, and you can use as many, blocks as you like. So similar to blockchain, you can create all of these different infrastructures, like Ivan said about the fact that just like the internet, there's so many use cases.
I love that metaphor. It's like a Lego building that you can't take apart.
Exactly. Yeah. So I really thought that was quite a genius way of looking at it, especially if you're obviously teaching the younger millennial generation as well. So definitely. So let's go into our next question. 1 second. So our next question is, how has digital currencies impacted developing countries, and what will this look like in future? So if we could first start with Nicholas on this one, and then if you could come in, Josina, after.
Yeah, my pleasure to come in first on this one. I think what we're going to see with the impact that blockchain and cryptocurrencies will have on developing nations is we're going to experience the phenomenon known as leapfrogging. This has happened a lot with sort of the development of the internet and cell phones. We saw these developing nations skip whole life cycles of infrastructure and move immediately into sort of the latest and greatest stage of this technology. I think cell phones is an excellent example of this. I believe these developing nations, and through blockchain technology and cryptocurrency, can allow them to, if they're underbanked individuals or completely unbanked individuals, it can allow them ease of access into the digital economy, which I think is a really important thing. And it allows them to get access to means of wealth generation and identity documentation that perhaps were very difficult to obtain before. It allows them access to, again, currencies and forms of money that are much more stabilized or less prone to hyperinflation and risk because they're potentially living in places that are politically unstable. So there's a whole bunch of different ways that they're already being impacted. I think a great example of this is perhaps Venezuela, where they've seen a huge increase in blockchain technology adoption as their currency became hyperinflationary, right? I think one of the first front runners to the table there was Dash. And I don't have any numbers in front of me, so I'm not gonna pull any out of the top of my head, but it became rapidly apparent that this technology and these cryptocurrencies allowed people to continue living their lives in a somewhat reasonable respect, while their government issued currencies were devaluating at an incredible rate. So I think over the next 5 to 10 years, if you look at what is happening in the world, and you look at a lot of the big financial players, at least for myself, when I see happening in North America and in large parts of Europe as well, and in places like China, you're now seeing the discussion of these governments producing their own government-backed cryptocurrencies, and these financial institutions are opening up whole blockchain departments. So I think we are graduating towards a future where most financial transactions will eventually be conducted on a blockchain, and that will be pretty much a global experience, regardless of whether you're in a developing nation or in a first world country.
Thank you for that, Nicholas. Josina?
Data scientist. Sorry, it's okay. It's not in it. So I was born in Brazil. I think that is a quite surprise. So I know what is a developed country is and how important is microfinance. So I completely agree with Ivan. And I see that cryptocurrencies can solve the problem of participation in international trade too. It's not only in finance and inclusion and identity, but can promote another kind of business model? I think that it will be the next question, but we can see now, 10 years ago, we can see that everything changed and all the agents changed their goals, and we are now in a moment that almost everybody has the same kind of opportunity to be part of a new ecosystem. We have only one problem. it's quite simple, but it's the connection of internet. So in first of all, the digital currencies impacted in developing countries, and this is the huge difference between non-developed countries is the access and the quality of internet. After this, we can talk about inclusion, we can talk about identity, we can talk about votation, we can talk about democracy, and we talk about also a new humanitarian platform. Yes, I'm an enthusiast of blockchain, but mathematically, as a data scientist and everybody connected with a financial world, DeFi, we can say that technically we have already results and the options to implement. The only problem is a political problem. So Susan, it's only this because this we can talk only one talk about this.
Thank you so much for that, Jacina. Ivan, and then Vasilisa.
Sure. Yeah, there's so many angles you could come at this from, and I'll just like piggyback on some of what Josie and Nicholas said. So one of the things, my perception of what Load is doing is creating an independent currency that's backed by something other than fiat, and I think that's has tremendous potential to help those in third world countries. Like right now, we have fiat currencies inflating at a rapid rate. So in the United States, where I am, we're printing trillions of dollars, and the people who are getting the worst of that are people in third world countries who depend on the dollar for their stability. So there's that angle. This is what Josie touched on. There's more opportunity in financial markets. So for me, for example, I'm not legally allowed to trade many cryptocurrencies in New York, and I trade whatever I want, and every single exchange I use is on a blockchain. So there's inclusion there, and then you have the issue of censorship, which affects most detrimentally the third world countries. And there's new class of services called decentralized VPNs that run all the traffic through node computers, like my computer. Actually, this one behind me right here is running a node for people in Nigeria. So that's a derivative of blockchain. And then the angle that I think is most important that people don't often talk about because it hasn't happened yet, just the opportunity and human potential that it brings to the table, because these Web3 infrastructures, and that's what I study most closely, are going to allow people to build like their version of Uber and Fiverr and Airbnb, but they won't need to live in Silicon Valley and get millions of dollars from venture capitalists. You're going to be able to do that whether if you're a computer nerd in Nigeria or if you're a computer nerd up in Siberia. As long as you have internet access, you're going to have the same like opportunity to reach capital. And now we have blockchain infrastructures where one person can code an entire open internet service without permissions from anyone else. So I think those are all the biggest ways, just to name a few, that blockchain will potentially help third world countries.
Thank you so much, Ivan. And Vasilisa?
I see you struggling with my name. Seriously, Susan, just call me Vasi. Let's make it easy. But no problem. I mean, when we talk about developing countries, we first of all have to think of this 1.7 billion people who have no access to the bank account, like we do in the normal, like in Europe, in America, in Russia, in whatever. But if we think about like Asia, sometimes like Africa and many other areas in the world, even Latin America, people actually have to hold cash or even rely, I don't know, on barter when you exchange goods for goods or services for goods. So with their digital currencies, when they started to show off their capabilities, people took it as an opportunity, right, to as I said, as Nicholas was saying, to have a normal life, a respectable life, when they can rely on certain currency and they can use it as a means of payment or a credit or anything. The problem which cures a lot is, of course, is the volatility. I mean, if you want to pay daily, maybe Bitcoin is not the best thing for you. I mean, right now, of course, it's going and hitting the new levels, but even a year ago, it was like super down, and you cannot rely it as the means of value. Or I don't know, if you are SME, you cannot use it as the means of payment again, because your accounts will depend too much on these fluctuations of the market. And then we're looking into more like stable coins, right, which can provide you a certain, well, basically the idea of the stable coin, I mean, I know that everybody here know, but maybe the people who listen in not much aware. Basically, they have the very stable value, and they depend on certain either fiat currency or gold standard or I don't know, diamonds or something, which preserves the value at all times. And of course, because everything is on chain, you can always track what's happening. So I think that going forward and developing how the digital currencies will continue developing in the countries will be more towards the stable coins. I mean, of course, people will still trade, people will still use the Bitcoin, Ethereum, or any other means. Like there are tons of coins and tokens out there, but that's more for like advanced users, let's say, who want to trade. But for daily, for like, I don't know, mothers, for businesses, that's the way is going to be the stable coins. They either can be like CBDC, they can be official at some point, or they can be created by the society, let's say, by us. So that's from my end.
Thank you so much, Vasi. Much more easier. Let's move on to our next question. So our next question today is, can we rely on blockchain solutions? And can blockchain technology actually eradicate poverty in the third world countries? So I'll first like to pass that to Ivan, and then if we could have Vasi coming after.
Yeah, that's a really tough question to answer. So, can blockchain eradicate poverty? I'd say probably not. You know, there's way too much there. It's not there's no silver bullet for it. I do think in the ways that I described before, and a lot of people described before, it will close opportunity gaps. But I don't see a way that central bank digital currencies or other incentive programs are like going to completely eradicate poverty. There's just too much to work with there. So I don't know. That's a really big question, but I'll pass that off to others who might be more.
So what about the other part of the question about the fact that can we rely on blockchain? Because obviously of all of these legalities and regulatory requirements, can we actually say that we can rely on blockchain as a future, a future way to exchange?
Oh yeah, in terms of reliability, I think blockchain is going to be superior to any let's say Web 2 technology. Like I said before, most of them are completely tamper-proof. I could trade on exchanges in any way that I want, totally for free. And all the hacks and scams that we see are always or almost always, like 99.999% of the time, which is way more trustworthy than legacy infrastructure. It's never the blockchain. It's always some periphery attack that could have happened otherwise. So in terms of reliability, blockchain infrastructures, let's say, are the best route always.
Thank you, Ivan. He's definitely champion blockchain right there. Vasi, would like to chime in?
Yeah, I mean, the question is very much interesting indeed. But again, I would align a lot with Ivan for the same thing. It's like, I don't think that the blockchain itself as a technology will eradicate poverty or anything. It can support their, let's say, the financial inclusion somehow, right? But again, we have so many more problems besides the blockchain, right? To start with, the internet connection, which we already said. Not everywhere people have internet. Even electricity still is a problem in some areas. Not everybody have access to iPhones or like to smartphones in general or to laptops. So to use the digital cash, you need a digital device. First, you need to work with that. Then, I don't know, I mean, people even don't have enough education sometimes. Their literacy, computer literacy, financial literacy is missing. So that all have to contribute there. And plus, I mean, there are historical inequalities in there and how the wealth was distributed, right? And it's still there. The blockchain is not about solving that issue. It's not even done for that. Again, it's the tool which is very much usable, which is pretty ready, which we can really rely on. And right now, in especially like in developed countries already, the regulational systems are slowly but steadily got improved, and they include these new protocols. I would say regulation makers, they trying to understand what it can bring to the society, right? But again, that's a tool you can use to help financial inclusion, to bring down the costs, to make it easier for people to use, to be used by people who have no banking or they are in remote areas or anything. But eradicate poverty, no, of course not.
Thank you so much, Vassi. Josina?
You're on mute, Jacina.
The most significant benefit by overcoming is definitely, for me, in my point of view, the lack of social trust. And increasing, of course, the access of financial service, we can say that blockchain will not save the world, everybody knows, but can reduce the gap between countries, definitely. As an economist, we can start to define everything by which kind of the line of poverty, which kind of the minimum access we have. So sorry, Nicholas, I changed your name by Ivan, so sorry, Nicholas. So as a data scientist, first of all, we need to describe all the variables, but blockchain definitely, with their own characteristics, they can access another level of inclusion and interaction. And mainly, in my point of view, as always, as a Brazilian too, an overcoming of lack of social trust. We are talking about corruption, we are talking about connections, we are talking about, okay, everybody knows what. So, and you can consider that in this growing process, in developing country, it's not only about financial inclusion, it's about another kind of definition, which kind of cryptocurrencies we will have. Because in this moment in Europe, New York, Texas, in all United States, European Union, everybody is creating new regulations for cryptocurrencies. So we are now talking not only a free market as before, but starting new regulations. So you have a new word for new cryptocurrencies, for new results. So answering these questions, we will have another kind of parameters to work for the creations of also CBDCs. So I think that is the next question, Susan, sorry.
That's okay, Jacina. Thank you. Nicholas?
Yeah, I mean, how do I compete with everything everyone just said? I think they've really made the very clear point on the fact that ultimately cryptocurrency and blockchains are tools. We can reduce the gap through a number of different factors and increase inclusion. And Josina pointed out, it's also about the type of money, the type of cryptocurrency that these people are holding. Is it in an inflationary asset or a deflationary asset? So simply by putting, a gram of digital gold in somebody's hands, will their wealth appreciate over time? Because holding that kind of money will help lift people out of poverty. But it is a highly political thing at the end of the day. One of the biggest struggles for Load has been, we're going into all of these regions all around the world, and these central governments and central banks are, for lack of a better phrase, somewhat terrified and or intimidated by the fact that blockchain doesn't depend on them for it to operate. It's essentially an autonomous vehicle. So it disrupts power hierarchies that have been established for generations. And now institutions are scrambling to try and compete with this, and hence where the whole CBDC initiatives are coming from here. But I like to, and I'm kind of going to be like, I don't want to put myself on any side of the political spectrum here, but you know, I think it's like putting lipstick on a pig, because the problem wasn't it was always the institutions themselves, the corruption within the institutions themselves, the fact that it's essentially a small body of people dictating the lives of the many. And blockchain can serve as a vehicle. The decentralized finance movement can act as a vehicle to basically democratize your money and separate your money from the state, which is a really interesting premise and that has a lot of potential powerful results. As to whether or not the utopian future where we all get on the Starship Enterprise and fly to space is actually going to come to fruition, I don't know. But there's a huge element of that plays into these cryptocurrencies and into the decentralized finance movement that I think has the potential to really reduce the gap of poverty.
Thank you so much for that, Nicholas. And we're going to go into our next question now. So our next question is, will Bitcoin stand the test of time, or will we see another digital currency take over? Is CBDCs the answer? So I know Jacina touched on it, so I'll leave her to last. And I will first go to Vasi, and then Nicholas, if we have you after, and then we'll have Ivan, and then Jacina could put her points across.
Well, if the Bitcoin will stay like the flagman of the crypto for some time, definitely I think it will. It's still actually driving a lot of value, and it's seen by the people, at least. Even like if you think about it in terms of marketing, right? So when you talk to people on the street who have no idea of the cryptocurrencies or not anything, at least they know Bitcoin, and that works for it, right? Nobody heard, maybe more people never heard about any other cryptocurrency but Bitcoin. So that always will be contributed to the Bitcoin itself. I honestly think that we are moving towards the CBDC world, little by little. Again, it's going to be digital euro, digital dollar, or crypto dollar, doesn't matter, crypto ruble. Because again, maybe it's not that optimistic, partially, but the government will not lose the fight on that, and they will like to return the control over the system. And there are some means to do it, and the CBDC is one of them, basically, because it's much easier to track, it's much cheaper to produce. You eliminate the problem of their black money, right, of their fake money, because you cannot fake anything on the blockchain. Immediately that just goes to history. And of course, you can include more people, you can provide it on the national level, and then basically it's like, as soon as you get your passport, you also get your wallet, basically, from the government with your, I don't know, digital coins, which you can use. But then again, Bitcoin will probably remain more like a store of value, so which we can use for long-term investment, and even like a gold standard to measure against. But eventually, I think it's gonna take a more civilized way, more governmental way, where people will start and governments will start to create their own currencies, and they will start heavily regulating that. Again, also to protect people, because right now, I mean, a lot of problems which exist in their crypto world is that people come here, they start starting to trade, but they are not protected. If something happens, it's just the goodwill of a certain exchange or certain wallet, rather than there is a legislation which protects these people. There is no insurance or anything, right? So you can literally, like in a casino, lose everything. So it depends on you. Education must be there. So that's just take probably here, and maybe I'm sure the guys will add much more to whatever I said.
Thank you so much for that, Vasi. Ivan, I think, did I say Ivan next? I think Ivan and oh, so did I say you next, Nicholas? Sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
All good. I mean, if Evan wants to go, there's just a lot to unpack, and this is the kind of stuff that gets me pumped.
You know what? I do want to go first, Nicholas, because I think I want you to piggyback off what I'm gonna say. So I think Bitcoin's always going to be king, but then you talk about these stable coins, and in terms of market cap, maybe one will surpass Bitcoin. I mean, if we get a real central bank digital currency, it's almost inevitable that it will. But I think, and I want people to challenge me on this because it's something I'm really trying to figure out the answer to. When you venture into the world of CB or central bank digital currencies, there's a huge lapse of research again, and it's like the difference between the corporate world and the crypto world. So any crypto project, I could go on their GitHub and read their code and have their white papers and have the entire history of its existence. And then with central bank digital currencies, you could have news articles and everyone's speculating on what governments are going to do, and you just have absolutely no transparency in it. So even if they were to create a real digital currency that was tied to the US dollar, I don't think it would solve any problems beyond efficiency, right? Because unless you put the entire treasury supply on it, so there was transparency in the system, but that would never happen. And then the whole thing would be centralized, and even the stablecoin race that we're in, everyone's creating these bond tokens where you could basically buy bonds to back a stablecoin, and then using bonds as collateral for things that are still inherently tied to the US dollar. So there's still inflationary risks that are outside the control of the blockchain space. And I think all of that, like, of course, when you're talking about currency, the narrative is going to win over the best technology. But what blockchain really brings to the table is true independent currencies. And people say, oh, well, they're too volatile. And one of the solutions I like to point to, and this is where I might want Nicholas to jump in to see if there's similarities with Load, but Ampleforth, which is the first rebasing cryptocurrency, it's something that Bitcoin wanted to do, but the tech wasn't there at the time. And one Ampleforth is always tied to the value of the spending power of a 2019 US dollar. And now we have the data science to do it with Chainlink oracles, where you could use third-party data to say what a 2019 US dollar is worth. And this way, if the Fed prints money, it won't affect the price of Ample. But then Ample also has an elastic supply. So like a cryptocurrency, it's volatile. But if you loan out or pay a salary out in Ample, and it's 10 years later, one Ample is going to keep a consistent value, and even more so consistent than what would be a centralized bank digital currency. So that's kind of where my head goes. Go ahead, Nicholas.
Really, really interesting. I mean, this is actually the first I've heard of Ample, but kind of like first impressions on what you put on me there. It's kind of like the one Dogecoin equals one Dogecoin argument, which means that it's still highly dependent on people's faith and collective agreement that this is worth $2019. So that is purely up to the will of the people. And that is the same reason that Bitcoin kind of... Go ahead. Would you like to clarify something?
There's an oracle process, and that's what the rebasing mechanism is for. So even if the whole community said Ample wasn't worth anything, the rebase mechanism would bring the value back based on this third-party data that's actually very, very safe and reputable at this point.
For sure. But again, that's a trust thing. People have to trust that. If it's trading on an exchange, let's say, and we've seen this with USD backed coins, right? They can trade above the value or below the value of a US dollar. Right. And that is entirely dependent on how the people trend and actually use it. So will it work? I mean, we're still in early days for the technology. It could very well. I don't want to poo-poo anybody's, innovative ideas. I love this space for exactly that reason, because people are tackling a complex problem from multiple angles. When you compare that to a stable coin that is backed by like two of the world's largest commodities like gold and silver, right? These assets have had a long-standing history of thousands of years of being used as monetary financial tools, as well as safe haven assets, right? Silver, especially in modern times, is in almost all modern technologies out there, everything that we're using to communicate right now has silver inside of it. Ergo, there is likely a floor. There is an innate value to this metal, where fiat currencies, or even trying to peg something purely on trust, you run the risk of people losing faith. Right. That being said, that I'm not to say that it's a perfect system. There are its own challenges, such as supply chain. Right. And even right now, if you follow what's been happening in Reddit with Wall Street Silver, there's a huge silver squeeze that's taking supply off the streets right now. Right. And those are real problems. And the other side of the coin of dealing with assets that are commodities, real tangible assets. Going back to the first part of your question, will Bitcoin be around forever? I think at this point it's clear, like, it's got first mover advantage. It's largely reputed as the granddaddy of crypto. It is a terrible currency for trading commerce. It is slow. It is, it again doesn't have anything other than people's trust backing it. And I don't want to spend something that's going to take me to drive my Lamborghini on the moon. Right. And that's I think the social psychology of that prevents people from functionally treating Bitcoin as a currency and use it solely as a store of value, which is great. That serves a purpose. But to piggyback off of what everyone else has said, the CBDC roles, central governments still need to operate. Central governments are still really important, and they still serve a role in society. And they need a way to run their books and run their countries. And the CBDCs can play a role in that. Now, so I may have a very diverse portfolio. It may be digital silver, gold, Bitcoin, Ample. I may hold a basket of all these things, but when it comes time for me to do my taxes, it will be likely that I have to go out to a central bank currency, right? But at the same time, I don't really believe that there's going to be like one, this isn't Highlander where there can only be one. I think the future of money and the future of finance is going to be very diverse. And what you're going to see is people are going to take their wealth, have it in a much more distributed fashion, and then go back to these central currencies as they need to operate in their day-to-day life. But we're already seeing in a really competitive space, and this is something Lotus tackling as well, is establishing crypto payments at the point of sale. Right, for merchants and businesses today conducting e-commerce and coffee shops and all that. Well, the cat is to an extent already out of the bag. There are already tools out there saying, hey, you can pay with digital silver, you can pay with your Bitcoin, you can pay with your Ethereum, or your Ample or what have you. And how do you stop that now that wheel is in motion? Can central bank currencies do that? I don't know, because you've already given people access to hypothetically, philosophically better forms of money, and now you're telling them that they can't run their businesses on it. I think that's a very difficult argument to make. So I kind of a long-winded answer there, but I think hopefully I answered it.
Thank you so much for that, Nicholas. I see Justina like nodding her head, so I don't know if you wanted to touch on that before I go to the next question, because I can see you like
You're on mute again, Justina.
Oops. I'm trying to unmute you.
So sorry, Susan. I believe that this kind of initiative, it's fantastic, because we don't have really answers, but we can have all the same questions, and we can talk about, and everybody can also share their own experience in their files. So for me, it's clear as an economist. For me, central bank is a central bank, commercial bank is a commercial bank. So there's only one risk. I cannot see a central bank digital currency, a CBDC, trying to create a competition with Bitcoin, because we are talking about different roles. We are talking about e-governance. So key topics, effects of the CBDC for me, it's the risk of disintermediation. We need to talk about new monetary policy and financial stability. It is well with Nick and Ivan and Vici shared with us before. So for me, we have another kind of player to create a little bit more a confusion. It's Libra. Do you know what I mean?
Facebook's coin, yeah.
Yeah. I always
Very
sorry, but we have another kind of we will have another level of the game. So it's just to say that for me, the huge impact of blockchain is changing all business models, including the central banks. So all their activities and the regulations, because okay, they have the power, so they can create. Okay, let's talk with all stakeholders, but we can see that everything is changing so fast, and vulnerability, attractiveness, and efficiency, they're the key points for stability. So it is only about this. I'm talking. The next step is how it will be Bitcoin stand the test of the time with Libra. You don't prepare this question.
I'll make sure that's the next topic for
The
my
next
next
time,
event.
please. So I would like to listen my fellows because I'm very interested about their point of view.
Okay. So let's go into our last two questions for this afternoon. So no, we've actually it's our last question actually. So our last question is, how can blockchain help and facilitate payments in the developing world? So I think we touched on that briefly earlier. Does anyone want to put up their hand to first address this before I select people? Okay, yeah, Nicholas.
I'll take the first gambit. I mean, there is the infrastructure is situation where we're still struggling with access to internet and access to digital tools.
Yes.
But I do believe that at the rate things are going, next 10 to 15 years, I think it's safe to say that most of the world will have some form of technology in their hand that will be able to use digital payments. Even in nations where they don't have smartphones, telecoms, their points plans have often, in some circumstances, become currencies, digital currencies, which people can use as a form of payment between each other. So, if things continue to trend the way they are trending, simply having a phone that can process a digital payment opens up a world of doors for people. You can conduct an entire business at the point of sale just using a simple app on your phone, like a QR code app on your phone, right? And by that in of itself is probably going to be the sole most powerful thing that enables people in developing nations to access the digital economy of the future. And then, projects such as the type that Vasi is participating in that give people their first, true form of identification, where it may historically be very, very difficult for them to achieve those kinds of solutions out there, where people can easily begin creating a digital identity for themselves that is verifiable, plays such an important role in tapping people into the economy of the future. So it's a really complicated topic. One of the things that was spoken about as well is the fact that most of these individuals carry physical cash. How do you take this physical cash and you turn it into something digital? That's a solution in of itself. That's something that we're trying to figure out as we go into these regions. But at least those two components that I just spoke about before, I think play among the most pivotal and important roles in lifting people up.
Thank you so much, Nicholas. Who would like to go next? Ivan or Vasi?
Yeah, sure. I'll jump in. So as far as I could tell, in a technical sense, the payment solutions are already developed. Like, you could send a transaction of infinite value for 1,000th of a penny. The issue is not many people know how to use those blockchains, and there's a huge gap. And then there's all these different blockchains that haven't figured out interoperability and probably never will. And so I piggyback off Nicholas. I think self-sovereign identity is going to be the biggest next step for developing countries, because once they have that, then there's no longer a need for going to brick and mortar bank account. And for the fact that we haven't solved for identity, you still need to go to the DMV in person and go to the bank in person. You can't do those things online. And so that's going to be a huge help. And it will also it'll help deter that there will be one coin or one something that everyone uses to transact value. Because right now there's 100 different coins that could transmit value for a thousandth of a penny, and sending them back and forth from each other is very difficult because your whole network of friends or people that you transact with probably aren't on the same network. So I think once we fix identity, then payments will have a completely independent infrastructure that will seamlessly be able to handle an entire country's needs, regardless of the physical infrastructure.
Thank you so much, Ivan. Before Vasi comes in, I just wanted to touch on the fact that obviously Estonia is practically a digital country. So I don't know if you want to put that into your comments, but it's quite unbelievable to say the least. So, Vasi?
Yeah, I mean, so I agree a lot with both Ivan and Nicholas regarding the self-sovereign identity and importance of that to actually, not just for payment solutions, for any type of solutions. I mean, right now, if you think about it, we're talking about digital passes, the COVID passports and things like this, and what we're going to use as a means. So what kind of wallet it should be or how it's going to look like. And some of the solutions include the blockchain technology because, again, it is traceable, but at the same time, it's immutable. You can prevent the personal data, which is very much important. So eventually, I think that, I don't know if this crisis which happened to the world will fast-paced us a little bit more because people already discovered a lot of digital world because they were teleworking and things like this. So they realized that they can actually do these things. The same with the adoption of the blockchain. I mean, as soon as it comes to the usage and the person doesn't have to understand technology in depth and he can just use it, the trust will be there. It will be developed eventually because, I mean, people using some ridiculous things in this life without even considering this, honestly, saying like, even the banking system is far from perfect. We using Google every day and we know that we're sharing a lot of private information, but we continuously doing this, all of us, even though it doesn't matter how smart we are or how conscious we are about our privacy, but that's how the world is already working. So we just need to introduce the proper tools for that. So eventually, I mean, there's going to be like either digital passes with sovereign identity. It will include your payments. It will include your health data, any other data which is sufficient for you. So it will take time, but I don't think it's going to be super long. It's just a matter of the critical moment. Once we pass the critical moment, everything will go super, super fast. And people will have to catch up a lot. That's why it's very, very important to build an educational system. It's very important to go and preach about the technology, go to schools actually from the kids so that they understand everything involved into the technology. I mean, the deeper they understand, the better, but of course it's not necessary to know on all the grounds and to be a coder. But yeah, if hopefully that answers your question, Susan.
They can use my Lego analogy when they are talking to the youngsters. Justina?
Normally, when I'm given classes, I always repeat that I'm not a native digital. I was not born. I didn't born in a digital world. So I transform myself. I became myself a digital mind. So, and to finish this answer or to open another kind of questions, for me, smart contracts, one more time, it's a way that we can promote another kind of interaction. And in the end of my thesis, is just to share with you, I proposed an analysis for data scientists and my fellows who is interesting is how our blockchain can connect with yours blockchain. So how we can have a constellation of blockchain. So if you have APIs for everybody and if you have interconnections with blockchains, hybrid, private, and the public, yes, we can say in the last level that we can really facilitate all payments. So, and you can have another kind of time, and also regularization. So regulation, sorry. So to answer, I can think that smart contracts and payments in the social security system is the base in this moment, 2021, mainly after the pandemic moment. So for all companies and everybody that is attending this event, can be sure that we have a lot of business opportunities in payments, business opportunities in how can I sell faster, better, and transparent. So the only problem now it will be the regulation. So definitely blockchain is helping our and facilitating payments now. So it is.
Thank you so much, Justina. I'd like to obviously wrap this up for this afternoon, and I would like to obviously thank our guests that have been listening, and also our panelists that have spoken to the topic today. You have absolutely been fantastic. And yes, so I hope to have some future collaborative discussions with yourselves, and obviously do check out jubix.com, www.jubix.com. We are trying to obviously break down some of these barriers that we mentioned today. And yeah, thank you so much for all of you participating, and thank you for our guests. Take care. Cheers.
Take care, Susan.
Thank you, Ivan. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Beachy. Take care, Susan.
Thanks very
Bye.
much, guys.
Bye.
Thank you very much.